Hey y'all, this hey y'all, this is Mr. Sheets from Shoals. Thought I'd try something a little different today and try live streaming a little bit to read. We'll get started. If you're not seeing it live, you can see it naturally. You can see it later. So we're going to read Junie B. Jones, first grader, Cheater Pants, Chapter 1. Monday, dear first grade journal. Yesterday was the weekend. The weekend is the nickname of Saturday and Sunday, only I don't know why. These 2 days zoomed by speedy quick. That's how come I didn't have time to do my homework. Cause what I what do I look like? A clock or something? Last night I begged to stay up to do it, but Daddy said no and he turned out my light. That was not helpful. Now I'm at school and Mr. Scary said to please take out our homework. I feel sickish inside. I hope that Daddy is proud of himself. From Junie B., first grader. Next to me, May got her homework work out of her backpack and she put it on her desk. She smoothed out her paper and smiled. I'm sure I'll get another A plus on this one. I get an A plus on all my homework papers. Junie Jones, she said. One time my homework was so perfect, Mr. Scary sent a happy note home to my mom and dad. I did a shrug. Blah, 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 I said back. May did a mad face at me. Then she quick tapped Lenny on the back of his head. Lenny, did you hear what I just said to Junie Jones? She asked. I told her that I always get A pluses on my homework. Lenny turned around. Please don't touch my hair, May, he said. I used my brand new gel to spike it today, and I don't want you messing it up. I waved at Lenny across the aisle. I would never touch your hair, Leonard, I said. Your hair looks like an interesting glob of artwork, almost. And artwork should just be gawked at. Lenny nodded. Thank you, Junie B. Jones. You're welcome. Lenny, whose last name starts with an S, I think I said. After that, I smiled at May very smugly. Lenny likes me way better than he likes her. May squinted her eyes at me. How come you didn't just take your homework out yet, Junie Jones? She asked. You're not following directions very well this morning, are you? I did a big breath. Then I quick reached into my backpack and I pulled out a rumpled paper and I pretended it was my homework. There, I said, there's my homework. Now please mind your own beeswax, you snoopy pooper, May. May's face got reddish and fleshy. She started to raise her hand to tattletale. Only just then the teacher called her name. May, it's your day to take the attendance sheet to the office, he said. Would you like to come up here and get it, please? Yes, she said, I would love to, Mr. Scary. The attendance sheet is when the teachers send the names of the absent children to the office. I do not actually approve of that practice. May hurried to the front of the room. I'm never absent, Mr. Scary, she said. I'm always here. Have you ever noticed that, huh? Have you ever noticed how I'm always here? Mr. Scary closed his eyes for a second. Oh, yes, May, he said. Believe me, I've noticed. May did a giggle. Also, I'm always punctual, she said. Have you noticed that too? Have you noticed how punctual I am? She smiled at the class. Punctual means on time. Everyone, she explained. Last year, I was so punctual I got the Punctual Award. The Punctual Award is an award for the child who is the most punctual. Mr. Scary stared at her. He said to please stop saying punctual. After that, May took the attendance sheet and she skipped to the door. Don't worry, room one. I will get this attendance sheet to the office all safe and sound, she said real loud. Then everyone who isn't here will get reported to the principal, and that's exactly what they deserve. Mr. Scary did a sigh. Please, May, just go, okay? He said. May did a wave, then she hurried out the door. After she was gone, I rolled my eyes around the room. All of the children had their homework papers out but me. My insides felt sickish again, because pretty soon Mr. Scary would find out that I didn't do my assignment. I swallowed real hard. My eyes kept on roaming around, and then what do you know? They roamed over to May's desk. And surprise, surprise, I saw her homework paper sitting there. It was right out in plain view. I mean, My heart pounded and pounded at that sight, because my brain was getting an idea, that's why. I tapped on my chin, very thinking. Then, quiet as a mouse, I pulled May's paper a little closer, and I copied what it said. After I got done, I breathed in relief, because now I had a homework paper. I smiled to just myself. Then I closed my eyes, and I whispered thank you to May for letting me borrow her homework. Chapter 2, Weekend Fun. May got back from the office. She stood at the door and waved again. I did it, everyone. I got the attendance sheet to the office, just like I promised. She looked at Mr. Scary. It went very well, too, she said. There were no problems I couldn't handle. Mr. Scary raised his eyes from what he was doing. Okay, well, thank you. You can take your seat now, please, he said. But May kept right on talking. At first, I didn't know where to put it, but then the secretary told me to put it in the wire basket, so I followed her directions perfectly, she said. Mr. Scary pointed at her seat. Excellent, he said. Now please sit down, okay? May didn't pay attention again. When I was in kindergarten, I got an E plus for following directions, she said. E plus is better than excellent. The plus sign means extra, extra excellent. Just then, Mr. Scary stood up and he took Mary's hand and he walked her to her seat. As soon as he went back to his desk, I strained my brain for something nice to say to her, because I was still happy at May for leaving her homework out. Finally, I tapped on her arm and I smiled. Welcome back, madam, I said real friendly. May did a frown at me. What kind of crack was that? She said. I just looked at her. Friendly does not come natural to us, I think. Pretty soon, Mr. Scary stood up at his desk. Then he walked to the board and he wrote these words. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was. Okay, everyone, he said, for your homework over the weekend, I asked you to complete that sentence, remember? Room 1 nodded. Good, said Mr. Scary, because this morning I'd like for each of you to read your homework paper to the class. That way we'll find out what our classmates do for enjoyment. Doesn't that sound fun? Room 1 nodded again. Even if it doesn't sound fun, you still have to nod. Mr. Scary smiled. We'll go up and down each row until everyone gets a turn. He pointed at Lucille. Lucille, why don't you start us off? He said. Lucille sits in the first row by the window. Last year, me and her were bestest friends, but this year we're just regular. Lucille stood up and fluffed herself, and she picked up her paper and she started to read. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was my Richie Nana took me to her expensive beauty salon, and both of us got manicures and pedicures. Mr. Scary looked surprised at that news. You got a pedicure, Lucille? Wow, that's pretty fancy stuff, isn't it? He said. Lucille shrugged. For some people, maybe, she said. She looked down and kept on reading. Also, we each got a papaya fruit facial, and Nana got her herbal body wrap. Plus, I got a seaweed scalp massage. Mr. Scary stood there for a second, then he nodded very slow. All righty then, he said. After that, he pointed to Camille. Camille is the sister of Chenille. Those two were twin sets. Camille stood up. This weekend, Chenille and I made a puppet theater out of a cardboard box, and we put on a show for our little brother Neil. Mr. Scary beamed at that news. Oh, that's great, girls, he said. I bet doing a puppet show for your brother was a lot of fun, wasn't it? Not really, said Camille. Neil kept on grabbing the puppets off our hands, and he made them kill each other. We don't like Neil, said Chenille. Neil is a boob, said Camille. Mr. Scary just stood there some more. Then finally he moved on to Roger. Roger was the best one so far. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was I went to get pizza with my dad, and I ate a whole anchovy, and I didn't throw up till I was almost home. Room 1 clapped and clapped for that amazing story. Mr. Scary was right. It was fun to learn what our classmates did on the weekend. I couldn't wait for it to be my turn, because I love to talk in front of the class. Of course, plus all I had to do was tell about my weekend, and Mr. Scary would think I did my homework. I put the paper I copied from May into my desk. I didn't need it after all, because what do you know? Today I lucked out. Chapter 3, Twitching. Finally, we got to the row right next to mine. That is where Jose and Lenny sit. When Jose's turn came, he smiled very proud. He said on Saturday his daddy bought him brand new soccer shoes, and he wore them to his soccer game, and he kicked the winning goalie with those things. Lenny went next. He said he got brand new hair gel, plus also he got a thickening cream. A thickening cream can make even the thinnest hair feel rich and full, he said. Whoa, I said. Whoa, said Herb and Jose. Whoa is what we say to be supportive. May sits behind Lenny. She stood up and she read her paper real loud. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was, on Saturday, I made a pot in my pottery class. And after that, I was punctual to my ballet class, and the teacher said I danced like a gazelle. Mr. Scary did a chuckle. A gazelle, huh? He said. A gazelle is a very graceful animal, isn't it? Yes, said May. Would you like to see me do a few steps? After that, she ran to the front of the room and she started to ballet. But Mr. Scary said to please sit down again. As soon as she got back, I jumped right up. My turn, I said, real thrilled. I tapped on my chin. Okay, well, let's see now. On Saturday, my grandpa Frank Miller came to babysit me, and he let me roller skate in the house. Plus, also, he let me jump on Mother's bouncy bed. Only pretty soon I got very pooped, so I ran into the kitchen, and I drank chocolate milk right out of the carton, without even a glass, I mean. Whoa, said Herb. Whoa, said Lenny and Jose. Mr. Scary raised his hand to interrupt. Excuse me, Junie B, he said. It sounds like you had a great time on Saturday, but I'm wondering why you're not reading from your homework paper. Just then my heart got poundy and nervous, because I should have thought about that problem. I swallowed real hard. Well, let's see, I said kind of quiet. Why aren't I reading? Mr. Scary smiled. It's all right, he said. You can start over. Just take out your paper and read us what you wrote. After that, I stood there very frozen and couldn't even move. Mr. Scary crossed his arms at me. You do have a homework paper, don't you, Junie B? He asked me. I stood there a little while longer. Then finally I reached into my desk and I pulled out the homework I copied from May. I waved it in the air, kind of weakish. Here it is, I said. Here's my homework paper. See it? It's right here. Mr. Scary nodded. Yes, good. Now, could you read it for us, please? He asked. I took a deep breath, and then I looked down at my paper, and I read it silently, just to myself. Okay, done, I said. After that, I quick sat down and stuffed the paper back into my desk. Mr. Scary came back to where I sit. He said, could he please see my paper? I felt shaky and sickish inside. Very slow, I took out my paper again and handed it over. After he read it, he shook his head. Then he took my hand and walked me into the hall. It seems that you and May had very similar weekends, doesn't it, Junie B? He said. I did a gulp. Yes, I said, it does. Mr. Scary read my paper once more. So, you take a pottery class, do you? He said. I rocked back and forth on my feet. Yep, I do, I said. I take a pottery class, and I make a little, well, you know, pots. Mr. Scary breathed real deep. And let's see, you take a ballet class too, huh? He said. And gee, what a coincidence. On Saturday, your teacher said you danced like a gazelle, I said very fast. Gazelle, said Mr. Scary. Whatever, I said. My teacher sucked in his cheeks and looked at the paper again. And you were punctual too, he said. That's amazing, isn't it? I looked up at him. Well, you know, not if you get an early start, I said real soft. Mr. Scary bent down next to me. His face was not jolly. Junie B. Jones, do you have any idea how disappointed I am in you right now? Just then, tears came into my eyes, and I didn't even expect that trouble. I quick hanged my head so he couldn't see. Sorry, I said. Sorry you're disappointed. Mr. Scary took a big breath, and he said we could talk more at recess. Then he gave me a tissue from his pocket, and I wiped my tears. After that, we went back into the room. I sat down at my desk very slumping, because what do you know? I didn't luck out after all. Chapter 4, Cheater Pants. It's still done Monday. Dear First Grade Journal. Right now it is recess. I'm not playing on the playground. Instead, I'm sitting at my desk and I'm waiting to get yelled at. I wish I could disappear into thin air. If I could disappear, I would run outside and I would find May and I would clunk her in the head. I wish I didn't even sit next to that girl, because people should never leave homework on the desk for other people to borrow. That's just asking for trouble, mister. From Junie B., first grader. Mr. Scary was writing at his desk. He looked up and called my name. Junie B., he said, I'm ready for you now. Could you bring your chair up here, please? My stomach flipped and flopped, because here came the yelling part, that's why. I did some deep breaths. Then I pulled my chair to the front of the room, and I sat down next to him. Mr. Scary took my homework paper out of his drawer. He set it in front of me, very serious. I want you to explain this, Junie B., he said. I want you to tell me exactly why you copied May's homework this morning. I tried to swallow, but nothing went down. Well, let's see. The reason I copied was I tapped on my chin. Then all of a sudden I thought of it. Daddy, I said, it was my daddy's fault. My teacher looked surprised at that answer. Your daddy, he said? Your daddy told you to copy May's homework. Yes, I said. No. Last night I wanted to stay up late to do my homework, but Daddy turned out my light, and so he is the reason that I had to come to school without it. Oh, I see, said my teacher. Your daddy wouldn't let you stay up, so that's what forced you to copy May's paper. I nodded real fast. Yes, I said. That's exactly it. Mr. Scary raised his eyebrows. So did May actually give you her paper to copy? He asked next. I rolled my eyes at that crazy question. No, silly. May would never be that nice, I said. It's just that this morning she kept bragging about how her homework is always an A plus. And then she left the paper on top of her desk when she went to the office. And that is just asking for trouble, mister. Mr. Scary leaned back in his chair. Ah, he said. So when May left for the office, you saw her paper and you just decided to borrow it, I said. I decided to borrow it to copy. My teacher did a frown. Borrow, he said. No, Junie B., I'm sorry, but borrow is not the right word here at all. When you copy someone else's paper, that's called cheating. My eyes got big and shocked at that word. Because what was he even talking about? No, Mr. Scary, no, I didn't cheat. I didn't, I said. Cheating is when you steal answers off someone's test. But homework isn't a test. Homework doesn't even count, hardly. Oh, but homework does count, Junie B., he said back. Cheating is not just about stealing test answers. Cheating is any time you take someone else's work and you present it as your own. He looked at me. When you cheated this morning, you broke my trust in you, Junie B., he said. We have a rule about this in room 1. We keep our eyes on our own papers. You've heard me say that 100 times, I bet. I felt surprised at that information. That is a rule, I said. No kidding. I always thought that was, well, just a suggestion. Mr. Scary rolled his eyes. No, Junie B., it's not a suggestion. It's definitely a rule, he said, and it's an important rule, too. I drummed my fingers on the desk. Well, I'll be darned, I said. After a while, I did a deep breath. I'm sorry, I said real soft. Mr. Scary smiled a little bit. I'm sorry, too, Junie B., he said, but at least now I think we understand each other better. I will not put up with cheaters in my classroom. I did a wince. Yeah, only I wished you would keep saying that cheater word, I said, because I didn't even know I was cheating hardly. Plus, I don't like cheaters either, Mr. Scary. On account of my daddy cheated me at Old Maid last week, and I am still not over that terrible experience. Mr. Scary wrinkled his eyebrows. Your daddy cheated, he said. I did a sigh. Yes, I said. Daddy raised the Old Maid way high in his hand so I wouldn't pick her. And then I did. And so what kind of sneaky trick is that? Mr. Scary covered his mouth. He was shocked, I believe. I leaned closer to him. And Daddy is not the only cheater pants in my family either, I said very quiet. On account of my grandpa Frank Miller is supposed to be on a diet. But yesterday my grandma found an empty pie pan in his closet, and all that was left was a little bit of crust and a plastic fork. I thought for a second. No wonder I cheated, I said. Cheating is in my blood, apparently. Mr. Scary did a chuckle. Well, nobody's perfect, he said. Everyone cheats on a diet once in a while, I think. But cheating at school is a very different matter, Junie B. Cheating in school is serious business. Are we clear on that now? I nodded real fast. Clear, I said. After that, both of us shook hands, and Mr. Scary carried my chair back to my desk. After I sat down, he took an envelope out of his pocket and handed it to me. I wrote a note to your parents explaining what happened this morning, he said. I would like them to read it and sign it, okay? You can bring it back to me in the morning. I did a gasp at that thing. No, Mr. Scary, not okay, I said. Please don't make me take a note home. Please, I really, really don't want to take a note. Mr. Scary thought for a second. Then he took the note back. Well, okay, he said. If you feel that strongly, I won't make you take it. He started walking back to his desk. I'll just call him tonight instead, he said. I did a loud groan. 'Cause what kind of dumb choice is that? I stomped to his desk and I grabbed back the note. Then I stuffed it into my backpack and I sat down at my desk and I wrote in my journal one more time. Mr. Scary is a tattletale. All right, here's chapter 5. It's titled The Note. That night at dinner, I couldn't swallow my meatball, because how can you swallow a meatball when there's a note from your teacher in your pocket? Mother kept on looking at my plate. What's the trouble with you tonight, honey? She asked. You love spaghetti and meatballs. I picked up my fork real slow, then I put it right down again. Is something wrong, Junie B? Asked Daddy. Are you sick? I got down from my chair and I stood by the table. Then I hanged my head and very slow I took the note out of my pocket. I did something bad at school today, I said real glum. And so there's something I have to give you. I rocked back and forth on my feet for a minute. Then I quick threw the note on the table and I ran to my room as fast as I could. I shut the door real hard. Then I ran around and around in circles because I didn't actually have a plan, that's why. My stuffed animals looked shocked at me. What's wrong, Junie B? Said my Raggedy Ann named Ruth. Are you in trouble? Of course she's in trouble, said my Raggedy Andy named Larry. Can't you tell? I bet Mother and Daddy are going to be running in here any second. My elephant named Philip Johnny Bob did fast thinking. Hide, Junie B, he told me. Hide in the closet until they calm themselves down. I nodded at that good idea. Elephants are the most smartest stuffed animals there is. After that, I quick grabbed him by his foot and we ran into my closet. We climbed over shoes and games, then we scrunched way down in the corner. Pretty soon we heard Mother and Daddy come in my room. Our hearts started to pound and pound. Then we tried to scrunch even smaller. Only too bad for us because Philip Johnny Bob accidentally knocked over a shoebox and it made a loud crashing sound. Mother and Daddy opened the closet door. I waved at them real pleasant. Hello, how are you today? I said. Philip Johnny Bob held out his arms. I love you people, he said. Daddy rolled his eyes. Then he came into the closet and carried us out. He set me and Philip Johnny Bob on the bed. Mother sat next to us. You didn't have to hide from us, Junie B, she said. Daddy and I didn't come to yell at you. We just came to talk to you about this. I flopped back on my bed and I put my pillow on my head. Yeah, only I already did talk about this, Mother, I said real muffly. Me and Mr. Scary talked about this for a jillion million hours at recess. Mother took the pillow off my head. Yes, I'm sure you did, she said. But Daddy and I need to talk to you too, Junie B. Copying someone else's work is a very serious matter, honey. Daddy nodded. Cheating is wrong, he said. We want to make sure you understand that. I did a big breath at that man. But I already do understand that, Daddy. I said, I don't even like cheaters myself. I thought for a minute. Then all of a sudden I remembered about the old maid. I sat right up. And anyway, if you think cheating is so wrong, then how come you did it yourself? I said, huh, Daddy, huh? Daddy looked shocked at me. What? He said, what are you talking about? I don't cheat. Yes, you do too, cheat. I said back, on account of last week you cheated me at Old Maid, and I'm still not over that terrible experience. Junie B, that's not true, Daddy said. I already explained to you, remember, when you raise the Old Maid above the other cards in your hand, it's not cheating, it's part of the fun. Yeah, only it wasn't fun, I said. It wasn't, because after you raised her up there, you did a wink at me like it wasn't really her. Only it was her, Daddy. And so what kind of sneaky trick was that? Daddy rolled his eyes way up at the ceiling. Then he shook his head kind of annoyed and he left my room. Mother ruffled my hair. Sorry, honey, she said, but I'm afraid Daddy is right on this one. What he did was sneaky, but it wasn't cheating. Trying to fool the other person is supposed to be part of the game. After that, she went on to start my bathwater. Me and Philip Johnny Bob flopped back on my pillow. We did a sigh, because grown-ups never do anything wrong, it seems, not even when they do. All right, that's the first 5 chapters of Junie B, first grader, Cheater Pants. I'll read the rest of the book tomorrow. Hope you guys have a good day. I'll talk to you soon.